Hello, comic fans. Here's Earl Grey. Cheers. Today it's another video about the works by Philippe Druillet after a while. Or kind of the works by Philippe Druillet, because the two books on the right-hand side are just inspired by Philippe Druillet, or use concepts by him. Maybe he had a hand in the rough layout of the story, but for the most part it's the work of these guys here. Even though Druillet gets his credit, of course, and why not? Because this book here uses his visual inventions pretty good, I have to say. So I was really intrigued after I got this book here in French and huge oversize in black and white of Babel or Babel. Of course, I really had no clue about the story, but I flipped through this book here as kind of an art book thing here and thought, hey, this looks interesting, despite of a real terrible new start of the Incal or some other bad experiences with continuations of series. I thought this could work, maybe. And this is Osidata, the ship by Lone Sloan, as the drawings really try to stay close to their original concepts. And I look at some pages here, really look interesting, to say the least. And especially when you look at the stuff here in person, we have even this kind of turnaround double page splash pictures, or whatever you want to call it. Obviously really trying to be Druillet without being really Druillet, but more about that maybe in a second. So yeah, you can see this thing here really has a lot to show you in terms of visual values, if you will. So again, I had no idea about the story and just looked through this book. And the reason why I bought this book pretty soon was just fear of missing out, because these black and white editions, sometimes they have the tendency to be sold out real quick. And, you know, I'm a big Philippe Druillet fan. But maybe my journey with Philippe Druillet's works, as I said I don't see this really as Philippe Druillet's work, has maybe come now to an end, because I won't keep this book here. This is the Titan edition, normal album size, or a bit even bigger, like the other Titan books with Philippe Druillet content. Now I have the story in color, and with the colors, here is a foreword by Philippe Druillet in which he explains why he has given his works to new talent so that they can run with his ideas. Again, I think this is a very good idea. And maybe when someone never has seen Philippe Druillet's comics, it's probably he will be blown away by this kind of stuff. But to be honest with you, I'm very disappointed, because you can see it doesn't work for me. The computer coloring here is just visible, and maybe I'm a snobbish old Druillet fan and hard to convince, etc., etc. So the art has lost a bit or a lot of its magic, especially when I see this. This is just mimicking the fantastic, with computer aid and stuff, the fantastic art by Druillet, and somehow it doesn't the magic, for me, the magic won't come across. I see really the effort and the hard work that is put into the story here. Another thing is that you can see lots and lots of speech bubbles. The whole story is told through speech bubbles, which I think is usually a good thing in a comic. But here, not so. Because the special thing with the most of Druillet's comics is that his heroes, and especially Lone Sloan, he's a loner, he's someone who keeps his mouth shut most of the time, and then when he says something, it has really weight. But here it is a to and fro, like in some superhero comic, and doesn't have to be a bad thing, but for me, Lone Sloan and all the stories by Philippe Druillet were always something special. And there's a thing where I even had some kind of Star Trek feel when they talk here, I don't know, through a monitor with each other or via psychic connection or something like this. Really, it was a bit an mix, a blend of Star Trek, superhero stuff in the costume of Philippe Druillet's comics. So, yeah, I won't keep this comic here. Maybe I will keep the black and white one just because it's beautiful, and I will treat this one as a kind of an art book. But even if my critique sounds a bit bitter, you have to see that I'm just a bit disappointed, which is a difference. So I really see that this comic here is not really bad. It's just not what I hoped that it could be. And maybe even this book turns out to be a good entry drug for some new readers into the druilletverse. So then this comic would be totally worth it. I don't know. Maybe this opens the druilletverse for new audiences. And there's something, some other interesting thing to mention here, and that is that this story here is sort of a part in a bigger project, including music. There's a band called Zombie Zombie, which uses Druillet visuals and visuals created by these creators here for a music project. So look on YouTube for a Zombie Zombie and maybe write this name here, and then you will find this video for sure, even if the music maybe doesn't turn out to be your cup of tea. It's an interesting project. But now to a book that I can wholeheartedly recommend, and that is this silvery, shiny tome put out by glénat. Mirages et folies augmentées. Obviously a French book. I think of this book for the most part as an art book. But even in terms of comics, there are a lot of comics that are rather silent comics, like this short piece here. But on just 4 pages, it has become pretty clear what a great artist Philippe Druillet is. This book collects a lot of very old stuff, a lot of pre-Metal Hurlant material, like this story here. And there are other stories that are from the early Metal Hurlant years. A lot of them not published, at least in English. But Lone Sloan 66 here, like the title suggests, is a very old pre-Métal Hurlant version of Lone Sloan. And there is some album publication out of this book here, but I couldn't get it. And so I'm very glad to find this comic here, which is obviously a fantasy saga with pretty normal panel layouts, but you can see, of course, how Philippe Druillet became Philippe Druillet with each page here almost. And he develops his world of Lone Sloan. And in contrast to what I said before, here he is a pretty normal sci-fi fantasy hero, and a lot of the stuff here is told through speech bubbles. And here he fights some kind of golem, and a bit later, it's a mummy he's fighting. So this is really a pulp story, pulp fantasy adventure. But hey, it's Philippe Druillet, and we can see 4 sides of his great comics that came afterwards. And so this story is really, especially visually, exciting. Of course, it helps when you understand a bit of French, but even my French, I understand here and there some sentence. That's more than enough, I think, to grasp the gist of the story here. It's real fun to see how he develops creative ideas to be out there already, and very cosmic, the Druillet style here. And look at double page like this here is beautiful in its own right. And then we have, I don't know, some concept or stuff for another story. This is only a fragment. But what a fragment that is here. So aside this strange comic here with Salvador Dali as a kind of main character, we have some real early stories that were published, I guess, in Métal Hurlant or Pilote. And that's already Philippe Druillet, like we know and love him. And here we have a cover for that Lone Sloan 66 story, as it was published by Humanoids Associés. Maybe I have to look for this edition here again, and maybe there's a chance to get this. Now, this book here is divided into several chapters. So the next chapter, the deuxième partie, is an homage to Lovecraft, as you can see here. And what Philippe Druillet did, of course, as you can think, the Necronomicon. He drew the Necronomicon. That's another story. It's a short story by Lovecraft, and here we have his sketches and final pieces for the Necronomicon. So be warned, when you look at these pages, you will become insane. Maybe that's the reason why I try to make a short video about this beautiful book here. Lovecraft and Druillet, they are really a match, for sure. So, then we have some funny stories, as far Druillet can do funny stuff, or a bit light-hearted stuff, so you can think that there are some stories around that character Wuz. This is not really a Wuz story here, but in a way. Some musician of the future here, and a lot of corporations that he did with other creators, like Gottlieb, for an instance. This is here. Druillet, of course. Yeah, you can see a lot of Druillet material that you probably never have saw before. So, Fluid Glacial is some kind of satire magazine. So, if Druillet is on that title or on that cover, you can be sure that there's some kind of twist drawn by Druillet, or maybe Gottlieb here. So probably Gottlieb drew this here, but it shows that Druillet has some kind of humor. Firaz is drawn by one Picotto, but obviously he understands. Yeah, in this story here, I really would wish that I understand French a bit more, because this looks really interesting. Especially Picotto draws the hell out of the story here by Druillet, and has some kind of Philippe Druillet vibe, even though his faces are pretty different than the ones Druillet usually draws. Yes, the cover for that story. Then we have, I guess it's the history of the stone cube, written again by Philippe Druillet, this time drawn by Serge Bianich. Yeah, you can see how his name is written. In a very obsessive style. I mean, to draw this stuff must have taken ages. Look at this panel here. That's crazy. And of course, today when some artist has to do this kind of panel, he will use his computer for sure. Why not? But then a lot of the magic of this drawing here is lost in my old-fashioned brain. So I really cherish when and like when modern cartoonists will stay to their old pencil and ink. But here, I guess this is a long time before we have Photoshop and stuff. Let's see. Yeah, this is a comic from the early 80s. So yeah, again, this is another instance where I really would hope that I could understand French a bit more. Crazy, crazy, crazy. But even if you don't understand really what's going on here. This is a treat for your eyes. As the whole book is a treat for your eyes. Here we have another cooperation, this time with Alexis. This was published in Metal Hurlant. And the first pages here are drawn by Alexis. But later on in the story you see that some other draughtsmen took the pencil here, and that's of course Druillet. So this is really interesting. This part here is obviously drawn by Druillet, and very probably the upper part of the panel drawn by Alexis. So it's an interesting mixture of both artists here. And same with the continuation of the story here. This monster is 100% Druillet. Well, these females here are obviously Alexis. So, yeah. Really wonderful book, and more of these kind of books, and I will have to take some French lessons, I'm afraid. Thanks for listening and watching. Goodbye.